Joe Russell. Hello, hello, everybody. It says we're live, so hopefully we're live. I've yet to see it pop up in front of me. I'm waiting.
It says live on mine.
It says live on mine.
It is? Good. Awesome.
There we go.
Yep, there we go. It's up. Cool. All right, guys. Hello, everybody in chat. Thank you for waiting a little bit. I see that the chat is quite busy right now.
Yeah.
And that's awesome. I think the later days are happening like really well. Like lots of people are being able to attend. So
yeah,
cool.
It does seem to work better.
So you guys, I'm kind of excited right now.
Kind of.
It's a lie. I'm not kind of. I am totally excited.
There we go.
Because, I mean, of course, you know, there's Joey, my other YouTube cast.
She's here, whatever, you know.
No. We love Joey. Joey is fabulous, darling.
Fabulous.
And you know, all of our fluxy goodness. But we were like, you know what? We're covering this queen thing. And someone popped up on our radar, and I was like, oh, we can't do this without her. She's amazing.
Someone popped up.
She popped up. She was like, queen, hello, hi. We're going to be talking with Bewitch, the kick-ass woman herself, Joanna Devoe.
Yay! Hello, queen.
Hi, queen.
So what we're basically saying is Cris is outnumbered by Joes.
That's true.
Totally outnumbered by Joes.
Yes. Two Queen Joes and a Cris. Queen Cris.
Yes.
Yes. Well, correct.
Yes, a Queen Cris. I don't get to be queen. I see how it is.
Can I ask you, do you guys identify with that archetype, or am I the cheese stands alone here?
I think yeah. I think that there's a lot of archetypes that, I mean, at least for myself, I identify with. Mm-hmm. So it's not like I am queen and only queen, but yeah, there's definitely times where I'm like, yeah. Well, you gotta have a little, like, for me, it's a owning a space kind of thing, you know. So what about you, Joey?
Well, I love the archetype of the queen, but I think the one that really speaks to me is when I flipped it and I took it to a dark queen place, because of all the archetypes and all the interest recently in kind of like the villainous queen, and then giving her backstory, and actually that's about fear versus coming into your power versus the kind of besmirching of these queens in storytelling. So for me, which is what I will probably focus on this podcast, the dark queen as a probably she's so wild and dangerous, supposedly, but she's completely in charge of her sexuality. So for me, the dark queen archetype is one that really resonates really well with me, and I can get behind the queen archetype as a whole, don't get me wrong, but that's my natural kind of seat. That's my natural throne where I go and sit down.
And not to jump ahead, but I feel like there's lots of different kinds of queens.
Yeah, absolutely.
Totally.
So that word.
Exactly. Yes. And so many witchy women gravitate toward Persephone, who is queen of the underworld. So
well,
I think there's a little bit of a flavor difference between witch and queen. So I've been like trying on like queen witch. Like I want like a t-shirt that says that's queen witch to you. But yeah, I think they do this a little bit. They like to play it sometimes.
Well, that's kind of words and archetypes in general as well. I mean, a lot of things we think of, it's like this is this and that's it. And the box thinking thing that Joey and I talk about a lot. And it's like, actually everything kind of bleeds in different places. And when you're exploring the perimeter of it, that's the exciting part. Mm-hmm. Because it's like that middle land, you know, talking about like merging witch and queen and vice versa. And does it sound different this way than if you flip it this way? And the energies behind that.
It's so perfect. It's so too.
Yeah, absolutely. I also want to extend that question to the chat as well. Do any of you guys identify as queen?
Oh, what I can say is that I've always identified as a card of Queen in tarot as being me when I'm doing a tarot reading. And that has always been the Queen of Wands for me, which I have here in front of me. So this is my Queen of Wands.
I love her. I know that is the first deck that I really read with, seriously. That's the Cat Black Golden Tarot.
Yep.
Here, let me click you, Joey, so they can see it. There we go.
There we go. There we go.
It's beautiful.
I love her crown. Yeah.
She's a queen of action, too.
Yeah, and I gotta say, actually, without knowing that, when I pull and Queen of Wands comes up, it's totally Joey.
Yep.
And that was always Joey to me.
Yeah, I think that's the passion, too. The Queen of Wands is so passionate. And I mean, hello, Joey Morris.
Hello.
Yeah.
Okay, we're doing show and tell, dudes, because I have mine.
Ooh, clicking it up. That one's gorgeous, too.
I love
Queen Elizabeth. It's Queen Elizabeth.
To me, she's Athena, but this is Queen Elizabeth. Eric Dune designed her, and she's Queen of Swords. Queen of Swords. I have a bunch of tarot cards around me right now.
Queen of Swords. And Joanna Devoe, I have to say, was actually like the introduction to kind of the Queen of Swords archetype for me. Talked about it a lot.
Yes.
For a while, and I was going through a certain time in my life where I walked into one of those conversations at like just the right moment, and I was like, oh, this is what I need.
Yeah,
I need to, you know, work with that specific queen, that kind of archetype, that energy. And then I actually found Hel, my goddess, comes out a lot in that, which I'm not the only one that says that. Kellyanne Maddox, who is also a queen in her own right, also sees Hel in that card, which I find really interesting. It's that intellectual element.
People see Morrigan in that card too. There are decks that depict Morrigan as Queen of Swords as well. So the interesting crossover between those two goddesses, which Cris and I have talked about in the past, we'll talk about again in the future because people really want that conversation a bit more. Well, I promise.
And Joanna pulls out a different goddess from it, I believe, right?
For me, it's Athena, but all three of those goddesses are vilified. As is the queen, which is why I gravitate toward vilified. I don't know why. It's just I get very defensive over vilified women, archetypes, things like that. I feel very much like, no, you don't understand, and let me explain it to you. And then that's kind of the entry point for me with a lot of this.
It's funny because the chat mentioned Persephone, and we mentioned Persephone in here. I've been editing today about Persephone, so I've been going back over all the myths just today with Persephone. And there's this thing that I see with her as a queen. Earlier in mythology, she was willing. She was the equal queen of shades. She was in her own power. Later in the mythology, they take away her power and she becomes the victim. And it's this thing with Greek mythology where you're either the shrew or the victim. And if you're in power and you're in control and you can deal out #Hera, she is possibly the most vilified queen of the gods that there is. You say Hera to people and people still run a mile in the opposite direction thinking she's all about wrath and she's all about, you know, punishing Zeus and his traveling penis. But
I picture it like a circus now.
Little bit. And it's really interesting to me though that what Joanna was saying is like we get drawn to these goddesses who also have queen roles quite often, and in fact all of them do, thinking about it, because Hel is a sovereign of her realm of the undead. Persephone is as well, and they all have these queen energies, and then the mythology wants to take that from them. And I think we're in a time now where we're trying to kick back at these myths and being like, no, there's more to it than this. There must be more to it than this. And look at these discrepancies in myth, because I can do that with the Persephone myths right now because I've just been looking at them. And it's like, she wouldn't be doing this, this, and this if she was a victim. She wouldn't be in power and control if she was doing this.
And what do? You take a queen, you take her crown away, and you make her a victim. To me, the queen is the answer to the victim. They're like opposites, and to me the queen is the antidote to the victim archetype, and the victim shows up in myriad ways, very, very sneaky. I have a video about the victim archetype and the queen, and somebody wrote to me in response to that about like, well, I identify as a martyr and not a victim, but really a martyr is a victim in disguise. Like you start looking at these different archetypes, and it's like, it's a sort of self-victimization. And so anyway, that's how I see the queen, as being like an answer to the victim.
Yeah. No, absolutely. As a Capricorn who often martyrs a lot, yes, totally being a victim. It
feels
totally
empowering.
Being a victim and getting away your power.
Empowering, and like you have some control when you're a martyr. So it's hard to.
But it runs you out.
Yes. Yeah.
But martyrs are generally, they end up dead. So wouldn't that just be like being dead inside? Isn't that what that martyrness kind of has that connotation of, that you've lost that will to live?
I think it's a little bit lonely too, because you're waiting for people to validate your efforts, and they don't. Because they don't even see that you need the validation because you appear so strong.
So that's going to bring me to the card of someone who is often called a martyr, which is, and this isn't technically a queen card, but the person that she represents is Joan of Arc, who I would totally see as a queen. And this is from the Marielle. It is the Page of Wands.
That deck is funny.
She's someone that a lot of people would say is a martyr. But I think, Joanna, you just touched on something that would kind of differentiate it for me. Is, oh crap, now I forgot what you said. I was like, the card is so pretty.
It is beautiful. I was just talking about how the martyr is a victim, but she can't see it because she thinks of herself as so strong and empowered.
Oh, you were saying that she's looking to someone else for validation. I don't think that she did this.
No,
I don't think she did that, and that would be the differentiation for me.
Yeah, well, and these archetypes take on different roles depending on the person. When I think of a martyr in today's modern world, I usually think of like a busy working mom who never asks for help and tries to do everything herself, and then develops like a well of resentment because people can't see that she needs help, and they're not thanking her, and you know what I mean? And then she burns out.
Yeah, well, and you know, when I was going through a lot of stuff with my dad, my depression and everything, and actually Joanna was one of the people that I spoke to during that. Something that I came upon with that word, resentment, is like it's resent. It's shit that needs to be sent back that we're holding. And it's not really ours, and we've taken it on, and that's that martyr move. It's like, no, it's fine. I got this. No, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. Oh God, I'm drowning. Why is everybody leaving me to drown? And it's like, no, you have power of choice.
Yes.
And you have said, no, it's fine.
Yes.
Instead of going, this is not okay, which is what a queen would do.
Absolutely. Yes. I
have a thought. What if these three are actually really interconnected? I have many thoughts. How dare you? How dare you? What if these three are actually archetypes that are just progressions of one another? And so you can see them within storytelling, but you can also see them within like the psychology of the mind of going through trauma, that we enter into a victim state and then it moves into like maybe a martyr state, and then we can push past that into a queen state. And it's all really about stages of personal power, because that victim mentality is when we feel like we've had our power completely taken from us, which can be a natural reaction when we've had a really traumatic experience and we feel powerless in that moment. And it's not victim in a negative mind space, because that gets said a lot, you know, the term victim, a lot of people don't like it because of the negative connotation that sits there. So what if it isn't what we think it is like that? What if it's just the initial stage of becoming queen? And that moves into this kind of martyrdom where we start to be like, we start to give meaning and purpose to our trauma, but perhaps other people aren't. And so we start to resent that and we get into that martyr space. And then maybe we move beyond that and empower it ourselves into like a queen state. So maybe it's more of a cyclic thing than it is separate ideas. Yeah.
Yeah, a journey. I think that's right on. And also women that are going to gravitate toward the queen archetype, they need to go on that journey. So it's when you first recognize that you're identifying with the victim. It could be the damsel in distress, or it could be a princess who like gives her power away and lets men or parents or someone else like do things for her a lot. It could be once it's just that moment once you say, oh my gosh, I'm playing out the victim. Oh gosh, that the journey begins, right? Because you have that awareness and you might go back into total denial about it for a long time. But I believe once you have the awareness, you have the awareness, and it doesn't tend to leave you alone. It just keeps like popping up for you. The refusal of the call, as Joseph Campbell called it, like you feel the call to the journey, but you refuse. And so like all these little characters keep popping up and triggers to try to be like, come, go on this journey. And eventually the hero goes on the journey.
Absolutely.
So Claire Clafty says, queens are so strong and the buck stops with her.
You're gonna have to explain that to me. Is that an Americanism?
Oh, yeah. It's basically like, you know how they say shit rolls downhill. Have you ever heard that one?
Yeah.
Okay. So if it gets to the queen stops it. She's like, no,
okay,
we're done here.
Because I had buck and I thought of like
Essentially.
Stag. See, that's
buck like money.
Oh, okay.
Like the buck stops here.
Okay.
Like,
with you.
Like, no, you give me this. Thanks. Bye.
Yeah. Is there anybody in the comments that does not like the queen? Because that's something I was so gung-ho to start talking about the queen this summer. I had this whole 2016, the year of the queen experience, and it was all positive feedback. And then I started this program to lead other women on this journey. And that's when I started hearing things. I started getting the idea that a lot of women don't like this idea. It triggers something in them.
I think we had a conversation when you first had that happen, because I remember that happening. And there was an atmosphere then, as there is an atmosphere now, where there is sometimes this weird pushback with the archetype of a woman being strong. And I had it this last week. I noticed it because I was talking to somebody who was a guy, and he was saying he had noticed the reluctance of some women to openly chat with guys online, and he was very understanding about it. I will say that. He was like, I know a lot of women run into these guys, and these guys like flip on them on a dime and send them dick pics and do all these disempowering acts and things. And so most of the responses from women were like, yeah, we've all been through that, and so we are cautious and hesitant. But there was a couple of posts in there that was like this anti-sisterhood thing that was basically throwing the actions of women, other women, under the bus to promote themselves in the eyes of the guy. And I've run across this quite a lot lately, of this, oh, well, they might not see your worth, but I do. And it's like, that's not what we were talking about whatsoever. We were talking about the fact that some women feel highly uncomfortable in certain situations because of what they've experienced. And so if we all back each other up as sisters, then we're like, yeah, you know, it's not fun when a guy's hounding you and calling you a whore because you won't respond to him. That's not, you know, pleasant for anybody to go through. And then it's interesting that there is kind of like this backlash against women standing together, and this kind of self-promotion thing that happens. And I like, it's anti-feminine. There was actually this comment in there that it was not feminine to be strong. And I was like, no.
There's something within our society anyway that's like, if you are pro something else, you are automatically anti something else. And that's not necessarily how this works. So, you know, for the dudes in the chat, for instance, I'm not saying you guys can't be a queen of your own.
Right. You know, when I had my year of the queen, Eric Silvermoon was having a year of the king. And so now every time I text him or talk to him, I just call him King Silvermoon.
Oh, that sounds so great.
Right? I mean, it's really, we're really talking about personal sovereignty. And I do not believe every archetype is for everyone. I'm not saying like every woman has to have a queen moment. I just think it's changed my life. And I think when something is that powerful for you, there's power in sharing it, because certainly other people are going to resonate with that. If it's true for you, it's going to be true for other people. But I have seen work around being the CEO of your own life, which I actually think is a very Queen of Swords way to look at it. It's like very like this intellectual of your own life, you know, but it could be being the king of your own life. It's about personal sovereignty, having command of your own experience. And a word that's not sexy that I think people kind of shy away from is taking responsibility for your own experience of life. And if you're in the victim, you've probably been victimized at some point in your life. And then to act out the victim archetype is to self-victimize. So people get very protective of that and defensive of that, like, because you're threatening part of their identity. So it's very complex and it's so personal.
Yeah. I'd like to touch on something that Michael said in the chat really quick. This is something I've been thinking to myself but been waiting to say. So Michael said, maid, mother, and crone. I think queen or aunt should come after a mother and before crone. It seems we have culturally skipped over the part where the women come into their power, which is like such a thing. Clearly we're worse off for it, he says. I honestly grew up with my mom also focusing on queen in that spot. So for me, there was kind of a 4-part. I mean, like, it was kind of unspoken, and every now and then we would touch on it, but it was definitely there.
Yes.
Because that's an important, like, absolutely. Where do you go from mother to crone? You don't ever get to rule the roost. You don't ever get to own that. The mother serves, and I mean, don't get me wrong, each one has its own power, but it's a different feeling when you add that queen in there.
It's also tied strongly to reproduction, which is a weird thing as well.
Yeah, that's true. But also creativity, I would say. I have a book and I can't think of the name of it right now. It's like Wheel something, but it breaks it further down than 4. It goes into, like, I think 12 stages, 8 at the minimum. But I've heard people talk about a 5-stage system using like the 5 phases of the moon. So you have like, you know, like you just break it down further and further and further. But yes, I feel like an archetype that you're actually working with, it needs to serve your life in, and if mother doesn't resonate with you, and it doesn't, with so many women are choosing to not have children for a variety of reasons these days too, I can see how that could leave them feeling left out.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to say what Now It's So Vivid just said. Remember, kids, the queen is the strongest player in chess. She's not invincible, but she's the most resourceful.
She can move every which way.
That's genius. I have not had that thought yet, so thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, in the archetypes, you were saying, you know, it has to serve you.
Yeah. And
that can extend beyond queen and into any other, or as long as it's something that works for you.
Yeah.
Again, to mention Kellyanne, sorry guys. Talking about her view of deity and everything, and then she said something about, you know, if it works for you, then do it. Like, if it's helping, that's really the bottom line. Yeah. No matter how you see it. And the same extends with the word queen. And a lot of times, you know, that shadow work stuff, like, you're resistant at first, and so you may be like, oh, queen. And if anything, that's a message, like Joanna was saying, is that you got some shit to work on there.
If someone calling themselves a queen or talking about the queen archetype upsets you, you may be identifying a shadow queen. because what I've heard, the feedback I got from the people that didn't like her, they thought that she was a bitch, or that she was, what's the word I'm trying to think of?
Manipulative?
Controlling other people, or other people were subordinate to her. Those are all, every archetype has its shadow. I'm not actually teaching shadow queen stuff. I'm talking about how to be an empowered queen. But if that comes up for you, I still think it's interesting to do a little investigation and see, like, well, why do I think that about?
Yeah.
Not that you're wrong. It's not that you're wrong, but if something really has a charge to it, if you get like, whoa, fired up about it, to me, that's always an invitation to explore.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I think there's a real reluctance with personal gnosis when it comes to archetypes as well, because you touched on this sort of, and this is something that I was thinking of a little while ago, and this can relate into how people even view goddesses, but also how people view queens. There are as many queens, many types of queen as there are people, because you can be like Queen Cleopatra. Let's go from history, Queen Cleopatra to Queen Elizabeth I, and they're going to be completely different in terms of culture, in terms of physical presentation, the way they interact with the world. And people automatically go for a very, I don't know, that when they're feeling like queens are condescending things, I think they go to a very specific archetype. And I always wonder why we can't move beyond that. We feel that we have to stick to what we think the archetype should be, rather than letting the archetype serve who we are on the inside. And it's a shame, really, because then we miss out on the enrichment of that process of being like, okay, well, this queen archetype doesn't work for me, but what if I twist it slightly? What if I go to a slightly different place with it? Is that still a queen? If it is still a queen, what does that mean? And why do I resonate more strongly at that point than I do at this point? And the sort of self-discovery that can come along with that seems.
It's a sort of like queen, witch, queen thing that we spoke on earlier, is playing with those walls and those building blocks. Something that reminded me of is when I was at one of my old jobs, and I became a manager.
Now I have thoughts.
Well, good. We have many. When I became a manager, I thought that there was a certain way that I had to be, right? There's a specific style good manager is. And as I was doing it, I realized that that doesn't work for every single person, because all of us have different strengths. That's why one manager may be more charismatic, use humor. One manager may be like no fuss. You know, one manager could be someone who is like, hey, the roof is up here and I need you to meet this, but I actually know that you're going to meet this, but the point of striving is what counts. They're all different styles, totally different attitudes and everything, but they all kind of accomplish that same goal. That over to Queen and say, okay, well, we all have different styles. We all have different gifts, different, you know, it's like if we were playing Dungeons and Dragons, okay, guys? Some of us have a 10 charisma, some of us don't. Some of us have a really high intellect. Some of us are very dexterous, okay? You have to use these things to your advantage, and to know how to do that, you have to explore who you are as that queen, as that player.
Yeah. Know thyself. I think too, I mean, I'm not talking about being the queen, as in the queen of the office or the queen of the group or the queen of the city. I'm talking about being the queen of your own life and ruling your own queendom from a place of sovereignty and personal strength. And it's a journey. When I ended 2016, it was time to pick a new word. And I wasn't ready. Oh, I just had a moment this morning braiding my hair. I wasn't ready to let go of the queen, because that was the word I worked for 2016. And the only way I could pick a new word was to think, well, what kind of queen do I want to be? So I picked excellence, but then there was this other word that kept like pressuring me. So I'm like, fine, I'll have two. And it was leadership. And all year, that's this year, all year I keep thinking, am I being excellent? I don't know. Have I stepped into the role of leadership? I don't know. And then as I was braiding my hair to get ready to talk to you guys, I just had this moment. It was like, oh my God, I'm teaching this queen course. Like I'm like leading this course, teaching other women how to become the queens of their own life. And I just had chills and I got all choked up and I was trying to do my eyeliner all cute. And I'm like, oh, don't cry right now. But literally all year, the year is almost over. And I have like been like, I don't know. Have I embodied excellence or leadership? It just didn't grab me all year until just this morning when I was braiding my hair. So crazy.
It's interesting there because you touched on something that I think is really important within like female interdimensional relationships and things, as well as the queen archetype, is we're talking about the difference between competing versus like outside of the self versus like an ownership of who we are. It's without approval. So there's this one hand of things, which is the competing with other women in particular, but it can be competition with everybody. And so you don't feel like you're secure enough in yourself. So there is a comparison, there is a detrimental behavior, there is maybe a condescending behavior towards other people. And then what Joanna's talking about is actually like self-ownership. It's like holding yourself accountable for yourself to yourself, rather than it being outside of the self again. And that I think is what real empowerment truly is, when you really want mastership of yourself. Yes. And not over somebody else.
Yeah. And kind of tying into what Cris was saying too, is like the management of your relationships and your money and your household. It's a position of responsibility. And it's
That's
like
the exact word that I was going to talk on. Yes.
It really, but it is. And something I talk about in the Queen program is like, you know, work on the word responsibility and consider it the ability to respond. It's an ability. It's a power that you have. It's a superpower. And something about the word responsibility has become so burdensome and unfun and unsexy. And like, I think for me, I was a woman who gave my power away to the man in my life, whoever he was. Because I didn't want to take complete responsibility for my life. And so like he would take responsibility for the finances, which put me in a position of having to like ask if I needed something, you know, or like plead my case of why I want this thing and is it a need? And like, it was so disempowering, but it was a choice that I made because I didn't want to take responsibility for my life.
Yeah. It's sometimes easier to let things happen to you, we think, but I don't think that it's necessarily easier in the long run.
No.
Yeah. And the queen is like, no, I'm not going to stand for this. I'll make my own decisions. Thank you. That is my scepter, please.
Yes, and you have to live with the cause and effect of that. If you're going to be responsible for your own life, you're going to make some dumb decisions sometimes. And then there's gonna be the cause. It's you like trying to navigate through this world, and then the effect. Responsibility is a two-edged sword. It's gonna be huge, amazing payoff and blessings. But then if you make a mistake, you're gonna feel it because it's your mistake. But also I think there's power in being like, that was my mistake. That was my choice. And not like passing the buck onto somebody else and being like, well, he was supposed to be doing that, you know. Sorry, IRS, I didn't know what was going on because I let my husband do it. And they're like, sorry, you're still going to jail.
And often the mistake, too, is part of the growth. I mean, I know Joey just wrote a blog that has to do with, like, failure and things like that on that topic.
Yeah. I think we've gotten into the point, and there's something about this year where, and Cris talked about this earlier, that there is this mentality of if you believe in something, then you are against something else. And there's not the allowing of people to basically screw up. And like in spiritual terms, we're always like, well, at least it had a silver lining kind of thinking. And it's like, sometimes we have to allow a situation to just be fucked up, so that we know what we feel like in that situation, we know how we handled it, we know what it looks like, and then we can learn from that experience not to go there again. And we can learn to say no without a justification, which I think is something that a lot of women in particular, but guys too, have trouble with, which is saying no without explaining it to the nth degree, so you don't hurt the other person, or you don't come off as a quote unquote bitch, or whatever it is. Because there's certain situations where, you know, you're perfectly entitled as an empowered queen to be like, I'm not comfortable in this situation, so no. Or I feel that this situation is taking too much out of me, time, energy, resources, whatever it is, so no. Or I feel like there's an overstepping of my personal boundaries and I'm not comfortable with it, so no. And there is a lot of like negative sort of nitpicking in general when people do say things like that. And that's, to me, that's just part and parcel of owning your own queenship, is that sometimes it's perfectly acceptable to be like, no. And you don't have to be harsh about it, you don't have to be rude about it, you don't have to be like accusational, I guess. You don't have to be like, no, because rah, 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 rah. You can just be like, no, I just don't feel comfortable. Or
at the beginning of this year, for my birthday, I went on a women's retreat. And in it, we talked about words of power and words that give away your power. And some of them were things that we use a lot, like perhaps, or well, maybe try this, or I just, or, you know, things like that, that almost like excuse what we're going to say before we actually say it. And it's something that has been picked up, and men can do this as well. But this was a goddess retreat, so like a women's retreat. But we talked about that a lot, and it made me just very, very conscious of the words that and what you touched on right there with that giving away of your power, and you know, the ability to say no without an excuse. You don't owe that excuse.
It's the, I know this is weird, but an awesome thing to do for writers is to, if you write a blog or a newsletter or even your social media posts, when you're going to talk about something, before you hit publish, look through it and just cut all of that off. Like all of the, I know this is weird, but, or I don't know if anybody else does this, but, or sorry, blah, 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 blah. If it cut all those little prefixes off, and you will feel the potency of sending that. After you do that, you'll be like, whoa, I'm like saying, I feel this way. I believe this. It starts becoming like these statements instead of questions or excuses. And you really, you'll have a moment if you're someone who does that, where you're like, oh my gosh, this feels really.
Oh, yeah. When I had a business call with you, that was one of the first things you told me. You're like, look, I love you. You're amazing. Stop apologizing for yourself.
Yeah.
I was like, do I really? Oh, yeah, I do.
I only see it in other people because I did it forever. And again, I mean, I think that's why when I look at queens, my favorite queens, like women that are out in the public eye right now, I think about women who are flawed. They have been through some shit. They have made so many mistakes, and now they're just very empowered. And what's fascinating about them is they tend to reach out to other women. They recognize other queens. Oprah is like one of my favorite queens of all time. And if you look at her, she surrounds herself with queens. Her best friend, Gail. Maya Angelou was her mentor. Toni Morrison was a big, important figure in her life. These women she brings on as columnists for her magazine, Glennon Doyle, Elizabeth Gilbert, Martha Beck. These are women, and they have different flavors. They're different kinds of queens, but they all have been through some shit in their life, and now they have a sense of command and personal sovereignty. And that seems to be the formula, I think, for like working with that archetype and becoming, you know, it's a becoming.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I think there's something that I want to touch on that we haven't touched on yet. And I really feel that with a lot of the queen energy, there is a sexuality and a sexual element to it, like a claiming of one's sexuality, whatever that sexuality might be. And I think this comes through with we were talking earlier about the cycles of women coming into their power and things. And I was wondering whether or not like that in a process of itself, that claiming of one's sexual self and learning not to apologize for it in a society which basically teaches women to apologize for their sexuality from the minute you can pick up a magazine, or from the minute you hear this kind of conditioning that comes down through all sorts of conditioning. And for me, that queen energy really, I mean, this is a highly personal thing as well. Obviously, I'm a abuse survivor, and I had to come back to a place where I reclaimed my sexual self and stopped allowing other people to bring shame to the table for me, even though that they still try to this day. There are people that try and shame me for that. And I think the claiming of one's sexual self is part and parcel of this queen thing. It's not like the whole of what a queen means to me, but it's kind of like a really important thread to me when reclaiming. Yeah. And that's kind of true with the Persephone tale as well, when you think about it.
Yes. Was she raped and abducted, or did she choose that journey? Totally controversial thing to say. Carolyn Elliott is the first person I heard talk about that. And something that I work with women on is to go from being pleasing to being pleased. And I think really almost, I would say all, maybe almost, maybe there's an exception, but all women in our Western culture, if they haven't experienced personal direct sexual abuse, we have been very, very subtly abused through our media and our images to be taught that we are meant to be pleasing. And it starts in our families when your parents are like, hug the nice man, give the nice man a kiss, or, you know, you don't want to sit on Santa's lap, and they like put you there kicking and screaming so they can get the picture. Like, it starts there, but our media is about like pleasing men. I was a late orgasmer, full like TMI, but like, because I was so focused, I knew how to be sexy. I knew how to rock a man's world. I knew exactly what to do because the training was there. I mean, like, hello. It's not, but then when you start like trying to be like, well, how do I become pleased? It's not sexual, but it is sexual, because how you do anything is how you do everything. It was very hard to have an orgasm when I was first trying to figure out, like, your body has to move in a totally different way. You have to have like certain, you know, fantasies going or something, but it's very different. You give yourself permission to go from being pleasing to being pleased. And I think that's changing very, very slowly, but I do believe that that's a very subtle thread of abuse that happens to us all, despite whatever other kinds of abuse we may have experienced in our lives.
For sure. I think Persephone chose her destiny, by the way.
Yeah, I'm going to agree. When I was little, Persephone was one of the first goddesses, actually the first goddess that I worked with. And I remember trying to find things on her and being like, why does she seem so passive? This is not what I'm feeling. Like, she doesn't, like, that's not who I see. When
you can find examples in the myth that contradict that. Hades nearly has an affair twice. Persephone gets it up in his shit. She turns these nymphs into plants, and she's like, no, bitch, you're mine. You're a victim. You don't do that. You don't care if his attentions are off you and whatever. And plus, there's all this mythology with her being sovereign in her throne in the underworld, and she can persuade Hades to do stuff that no one else can. She says, give Orpheus and Eurydice a chance, and he like, all right, if this means so much, okay, cool. And do we think Hades does that at any other point with giving the dead back to life? No. The only occasion he ever does it is when Persephone puts her foot down about it. these stories, even outside of personal gnosis, which I agree, she's a total badass, so the whole her being abducted thing never sat well with me. And I honestly feel like she chose it. And because in Greek society, going against the wishes of your parent was such a huge deal, that's where the myth went. So rather than it being like she chose Hades and she married outside of her mother's wishes and things, they changed it to her being abducted and things to reinforce that social demand on young women.
Yeah, and to take her power away, to make her a damsel in distress, both to Hades and her mother. Like, she was like, save me, you know. And another way to think, this is what the thought that I had after listening to Carolyn Elliott, and this is because I relate, this ties into my own experience, is that she went off with the bad boy.
Mm-hmm.
Animus thing. And you pay a price when you do that. You go to hell, and it's very exciting and rock and roll and sexy and dark. But what you're really seeing is this is what I experienced, is the power in that bad boy that you actually have in yourself, but that you don't feel free to express. Mm-hmm. So you get to be like, hey, and like hook yourself up with it in a way, but it's really your own power. When it's outside yourself, when you're trying to hook up with somebody so you can experience your own power that way, it becomes perverted, it becomes twisted, it becomes dark. It's only when you reclaim your sense of self that you get to maybe emerge from the underworld and bring that darkness with you up into the light and be like, I'm all things and I am a queen. And you might not want the bad boy anymore.
Yeah. And, you know, also, since we're like kind of dancing around it, can we talk about the princess for a second here?
Yes.
Sure. And like the becoming into that, because I mean, we touched on it a little, and then like Persephone essentially was the princess because Demeter, her mother, is Mother Earth. Yeah. Queen in her own right. And then, you know, she kind of ran away to become a queen.
Yes. I have a video on this, Cris, the free video series. I know you're sharing a link somewhere, but it's one of the videos is just about that. And I totally want to talk about that here, but I'm just saying, like, you're so right on. That is, did I interrupt your thought process?
No, go ahead. I was just like, hey, can we talk about this for a second? I don't have like specifics yet, but I'm just bringing it to the floor.
I'm ready. I brought out my tarot cards too, because I love the tarot Illuminati. I brought out the Princess of Cups, and you can see like here's her little intuition popping up in her psyche, and she looks kind of surprised, like, oh, what is this? And then she becomes the Queen of Cups, and she has like full possession over the depths of her psyche. And I really am interested in young girls and teenagers being kind of queens in training when we use the word princess, as opposed to the damsel in distress, which is how it is programmed into us almost across the board, except for in recent years with like the movie Brave. That was like an empowered queen in training. That to me is what a princess should be. But we are raised on a very disempowered princess. Culturally, it means a spoiled woman. He's like, her man is buying her anything she wants, and people do things for her, which is not a good position. It's giving your power away. And then the mythology is all about the princess has to be saved. She has to be rescued. So we have shoved her, this damsel in distress, this kind of Eight of Swords. I don't have Eight of Swords here, but it's like a woman, a damsel in distress, like, woe is me. There's 8 swords around her. The shore is like coming up and threatening her, and nobody's keeping her there. She has like, her hands are like barely tied together. There's a hole in the gate of swords that she can just walk out, and there she stands like, somebody help me, save me. And that's what we train young girls to do. So I really enjoy this deck, the way the princesses are depicted. Because they look like training.
That princess card is also beautiful too, because all the colors are earth, except for the white that is this like spiritual becoming. It's like streaming out from her head area and everything. And I thought that was beautiful. Like in terms of symbolism.
Yeah, the swords is a favorite of mine too, because it's this girl, she looks young and she's got this wild hair and the wind is blowing and she's holding this sword and it looks like she's holding it for the first time. That's how the princesses are kind of depicted in this deck. And for those who don't know, the princesses are the pages and other decks.
Yep. So the Marielle Denmark would have been listed as princess.
Right. So it's a training process, right? Anyway, that's to me the difference. I think what we need to move into, I could go all into like the whole hashtag Me Too thing that's going on, because I have a lot of heated, complex thoughts about it that I don't see anybody talking about at all.
Oh, I bet we did.
Maybe you did. Maybe you did. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Do we want to touch on there's a couple of questions about the Queen archetype, which are having problems with it in the chat. So I thought if we touch on that and then we can move on.
If that's okay with you, Joanna.
For sure.
And then we'll come back to Me Too.
Yep. So go ahead, Joey. Since you have chat now.
Yeah. Well, the lady who lets me call her Mary, because every time I try and pronounce Amaryllis, I do it wrong.
You did it right then.
That's why I said it like that, because I knew that's how I'd say it correctly. Because I would sometimes feel as though the reclaiming of Queen has to be a masculine force, like the businesswoman archetype. But how do you find that strength and power from your feminine side? And Claire Craft said there's nothing weak about femininity. So there's something that I did want to say about that. There's nothing necessarily anti-feminine about maybe wearing a business suit. I think femininity is a state of mind. I think what we have been taught is feminine is like, you know, frilly and dresses and whatnot. And growing up, I was not a dress person. Now, I was quite slim when I was growing up to a certain point, but I was always very busty. And I just didn't jive with dresses. So I would always be in jeans and then I would have a particular top, and it was much more like power female kind of look growing up. And that to me was feminine. And I would kick it up with some accessories, and I wear makeup if I felt like it, and I don't wear makeup if I don't feel like it. And I think for me, the balance of what is actually feminine is going internal and thinking, what feels good to me? It doesn't necessarily have to even be feminine, necessarily. It's just what feels good when you're wearing it. Going from that point.
Like, I have an issue with the fact that, like, to be someone who's in business, we have to be masculine now. Like, because of this, what the standard that we've had set for us in the world is that you have to be a man to do that.
Well, I think too, there's, you know, when you take sex and gender out of it, and you use, and this we could argue all day about blue in the face, till we're blue in the face. But let's just say feminine is a receptive state and masculine is a projective state that we all have. If you're starting a business, you need both. You need the masculine to project yourself out into the world, to stay very organized and things. And then you need the feminine to be receptive and to be in a place of power. To me, the feminine energy, this could be if you're a tomboy, it could be if you're wearing a business suit, it could be if you're a man, or if you're super girly and you love all the feminine things. It's about really like aligning with your own sense of pleasure and genuine, authentic joy and desire, and really like soaking in at that so it's attractive. So you allow, it's more of an allowing. It's like attracts like. It's like, this really changed my life in terms of marketing too, and I think this is a feminine quality. I started being like, I can't promote something if I'm not totally excited about it. And that genuine enthusiasm, like, this is amazing, this changed my life. That enthusiasm is, I think, feminine because it's receptive. It allows other people to be like, what is that? You know, and like, oh, I want to feel that way too, as opposed to, you need this thing, it's going to change your life. Do you know what I mean? There's like these little, and that's my take on it. It could be different for everyone, but that's my experience.
So what I heard in Cris-ish is you do you, boo-boo.
Kind of.
You do you. Don't worry about that. You do you. And do you as much as you can. Like, just like go all out. Be who you are, say what you feel.
Yeah. But don't be
Allow.
afraid to play with that. Like, you don't have to stay in one state. Because, for example, I wear a lot more gothic clothes now. Because when I was growing up, I really loved all the gothic clothes, but I didn't have the guts maybe to play with it, because my sister was very gothic and she was traditional gothic, so she had all of the long dresses and things. Even to this day, I don't do that. I like mix up, got some gothic clothes with some non-gothic clothes and find a nice balance for myself in what I like. So even to the, you know, to this day, I think that's just clothing and things, but it's just playing around with what makes you feel empowered more than anything.
And if you enjoy your femininity, if you identify as being very feminine, I say, like, make a list of all the things that make you feel that way, and really lean into it and see what that brings into your life. Like, be like, what if I like loved wearing pink lace so much and I just totally rocked it and learned how to be the queen of pink lace, to be like, I'm literally going to walk into this business meeting wearing a pink lace dress right now and everybody can fuck off if they don't like it. And then learning to be uncomfortable with it, and then like getting used to it, and then to actually start enjoying it. And then lo and behold, 5 meetings later, there's another woman in a pink lace dress who is looking at you being like, ooh, we can do that now, you know?
Yeah. You know, I think it's really all about like defining it for yourself, that feminine, masculine thing, and figuring out what that is to you. Like you said, make a list, see, you know, see what that is on paper, make it physical in front of you in some way that you can actually like go, yeah, this is this to me, and explore.
And why? And why? Why does that? Do you know, like, you can just keep, that's the air sign in me.
Right.
You can just go deeper and deeper and deeper.
Yeah, well, and like growing up for me, I didn't think of myself as effeminate at all. I was quite the tomboy. I wore like the wide leg Jinko jeans with the chains and the band t-shirts, and I was like a little metalhead. So now I'm like a big metalhead basically, with makeup. And, but I didn't feel like I didn't feel comfortable in dresses. I didn't feel comfortable in things that were frilly, and I felt I didn't look right in it. Not only did I not feel right, I didn't look right. And because it was something that I would try. I would try and put it on and try and be that, and then I'd be like, this isn't me. This doesn't, it feels weird. And the thing is that over time, I kind of learned that Jinkles are coming back. What? Chat? Sorry. Get in, Cris. So, over time, I kind of learned that I could create what that meant to me, what woman was to me. And I started playing because I was someone who was always artistic. I liked, you know, music and art and all of this kind of stuff. So I naturally gravitated to makeup. And for a while, I wanted to be a professional makeup artist. And it's because I realized that for me, makeup was literally painting on your skin, which you guys may have seen evolved into things. But took me a while to realize that using yourself as a creation like that, and reinventing and creating yourself in different ways was what that was to me.
Yeah.
So I can wear a power suit, I can wear a lacy dress, I can wear them together because that's creating, that's playing, that's and you know, that's the sovereignty side, is like, no, this is who I am regardless, and I'll do what I want. And it's, yeah, you know, leather jackets, very clean, like I agree, I love my leather jacket. But it's something that I thought, nope, this is what that looks like, and I can never be that.
Yes. I think,
and then through time following what I loved, I found that I could.
There's a little shadow thing that happens a lot now when people are really into empowerment that I've just noticed personally. Like, let's say a woman, you know, I said, ask why. Why are those things feminine? Yeah. There's going to be 2 reasons. It's either going to be, well, because I was conditioned to believe that that's feminine, and then that gives you permission to be like, wow, well, let me start defining this for myself. Or it could be the way we're conditioned to be feminine is really right on with your take of being feminine. And I think what happens is there's this range, right? And the way culture used to be, it's slowly changing, is like, this is the beauty standard. You have to be skinny and blonde and blue-eyed, period. Or this is what feminine is. It's playing with dolls. It's wearing pink. It's being very polite, period. Well, there's some women that are pink and polite. There are some women that are skinny blondes. Hello. You get into a problem when you start saying, you show pictures of larger women and you start saying, this is what a real woman looks like. You're automatically negating all of those women who don't look like that. And you're just, the pendulum is swinging instead of being encompassing. The same thing with femininity. It's like, well, I like pink dresses, you know, like, I'm not, like, I can't be cool now, or like, have I been brainwashed? No, you're just one of those women, you know?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah, and that's actually, that's a really good point to make, Joanna, about that. When I said, you know, this is who I thought I was, that when I was a kid, it was sort of a judgment on that person.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's that us versus them thing that we talk about sometimes, but it's like, as you get older, you realize that, like, they have their own issues too, and they have their own issues with their body and how they look and their standard of femininity and what that maybe means to them. And it could be entirely different, or they could love it and, like, it has nothing to do with you. Like, they're happy for you to be you, as long as they get to do what they want to do, you know?
Yes.
And it took a while. I remember when all of the images started coming out with, like, this is what a real woman looks like, or real women have curves. That one pissed me off so much. And I have curves, okay?
Yes.
But you don't get to define what's real to someone else.
And you millennials now too. You millennials with your, like, I can't keep track with all of the political correct terminology. I feel like I'm going to put my foot in my mouth at any minute with, like, gender fluidity and all of the names for it and stuff. I'm just like, I'm just gonna shut up and let them talk, because I don't even know how to not step in it with, like, you know, I'm a Generation X person. We did not even have that vocabulary. So it's really, things are changing so fast I can't even keep up with it. But it's in this expansion of what is masculine and what is feminine, what is beautiful.
Absolutely. Joey, you wanted to say something?
I'm going to jump in with a few points. One, pink used to be the masculine color. That has changed over the history. Pink used to be male. So baby clothing, men wearing particular colors. Pink used to be a very masculine color, and it's only in recent times that it's become a feminine color, which, when more you know. And it's the same with death colors, that white used to be the death color, and it flipped in Victorian period into black. So the thing about anything which is defined as masculine or feminine is it's not always been that way. It's evolved, it's changed, it's moved around, it's largely dictated by what's going on at any given point in society and culture. I will say with the curve thing, is my interest in when that came out, like, real women have curves, it felt very much like a backlash against women since the 60s being told they should look like Twiggy.
Yes.
And I didn't, as I was a teenager when that came out, I felt a little bit of relief at that point, because everything that I'd ever seen growing up was like, you have to be skinny, you have to be slim, you have to be tiny. And even when I was a size 8, which is a UK size 8, so I have no idea what it is in American, but that is tiny, I was still curvy, I was still hourglass shaped, and I was having women telling me that I had a fucked up body shape. Now, you go back to the 50s, I had the ideal body shape, but growing up in this society of you have to be skinny, it was a really weird thing for me. And then that came out, it was like a sigh of relief in some ways. And then I actually started to delve a little deeper into that and realize that there's still this weird us versus them mentality that comes up. And it's, for women, 9 out of 10 times is, I'm not sure, I will look up what it is as a US size, hang on. It is an us versus them mentality thing that happens, and I think it's really dangerous, because I posted this last week, like, to get to a real sisterhood, we have to get rid of the us versus them mentality. We can all be different, and we can still all be queens. My queendom does not stop your queendom. And just because somebody else is a queen doesn't mean you need to be taken from their queen, because that's not going to make you a queen. You've got to go internal. You've got to find what makes you a queen for yourself. So,
I think women of color are an amazing example too of lifting yourself up when society is not reflective of what you need to see, like the beauty standard. Because for years, like Black women were not in our magazines or even like represented on TV. And so they had their own beauty standard within their community, things that made them feel beautiful. And they had their own magazine, like Essence Magazine, before they got to like be a part of the broader conversation. They were still like defining it for themselves. And I think a certain strength came out of that. I talked to Abiola Abrams on the podcast about that, and she had an awesome, she had many more poignant things to say about it than I could, because she is a woman of color. But it's just something I observed growing up. I knew it wasn't right that we were only seeing like one kind of woman in the magazines. Even though she kind of looked like me, I still knew it was weird. I knew it was strange. I knew it wasn't the full spectrum of beauty.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, and I'm glad that you brought that up too, because it's not just size. It's not just what we're wearing. It's skin color. It's culture. It's how we carry ourselves. I mean, just today on Instagram, I was told in a picture that says hashtag so full it hurts because Thanksgiving dinner. I was told by some dude, you should smile.
Oh.
Which got him blocked, because also he was probably a bot. But
all of these things are objectification, which is a way of taking your power away. It's not about size. It's not about color. It's not about being a tomboy. It's not about wearing a dress. It's really just about, you're an object. I own you, and I will tell you how you will be.
Right. And a queen is no one's. A queen is her own.
Yes.
Do we want to go to Me Too from that point? Do we want to circle round back to Me Too? That seems like a good point.
Segue. Are we missing anything in the comments? I don't want to be ignoring anybody.
I don't think so. I think people are talking about defining your own beauty.
Well, Gothic Arcana, I want to hear from, especially right now. Everyone is pitted against each other for no reason, regardless of gender, ethnicity, or archetype, and it sucks. We all need to accept that everyone is different, has a different idea of beauty, and that's okay. Yeah, exactly.
I think we're too obsessed with
echoing this.
I think we're too obsessed with being beautiful. What about things that we define as being ugly? And why is that so? And why can't we get behind that train? Like, sometimes we need to ugly cry or ugly scream.
So my old, I would purposely upload pictures making faces, like contorting my face as ugly as I could get it. Why not?
Yeah.
Because there's actually competitions called gurning where people do that and they win things. My grandmother was someone who she was called a character. Animated. She would make faces. She would, you know, and like stick her belly out and all kinds of stuff. Is the life, and it was because she was kind of owning that ugly in a way. And she was going, no, you know what? It's cool. Like, this is mine, and this is also a side to me, and you can totally be that.
Yeah.
Do you want me to answer that question? The B question.
How about we set that to the side, because we're about to get into Me Too, and I think we're going to run into it, unless you want to do that first.
No, it's okay. We can go for Me Too. Yeah, do that.
Because that's going to circle back around. So yeah, so Me Too.
See, I'm afraid to share my opinion here. I haven't shared it anywhere about it.
Safe space.
Safe space. Okay. Here's what I think. I think a lot of things. It's a huge, complicated issue, but something I have not seen a lot of. since I complained about this to my friend Dawn, she sent me a link where somebody was talking about it, but I have a lot of issues with it. One of the issues is if we're going to be the queens of our own lives, we need training. We need to train our little girls, and we need to train our teenagers how to deal with a sexual assault. And immediately, like the legal ramifications of that, like you have to immediately go, if you've been raped, you have to go get a rape kit. You have to tell witnesses, you have to tell other people, you have to call the police. You teach them self-defense. You send them to self-defense classes. You teach them to yell no. You don't raise your daughters to be pleasing. You raise them to have healthy boundaries. You raise them to learn to say the word no, because that would spare us some of these sexual assaults. Some are beyond our own empowerment, but a lot of what we're experiencing right now are women in the older generations who were just raised to be complete victims. And the additional problem to that is our system does not believe women. Women are afraid to go to the police. They're afraid to do that. So it's a big systemic problem. We have to start working on the laws. We have to start educating police better about how to deal with assault victims. And I just don't see a lot of conversation around that. I see a lot of the conversation around, which is good. It all has to come up. It's this giant shadow to be healed. But the main conversation I see is I was traumatized and I was assaulted, down with the perpetrator. But I really feel like we're missing the opportunity to have a bigger conversation about how do we protect ourselves and our kids now, like going forward. And it's going to be judicial, and it's going to be personal, and it's going to involve so many different things.
I'm in two minds about the self-defense class, because on the one hand, I agree that it's necessary. And on the other hand, it saddens me that it's necessary. It's like that we have to
always too. It goes
absolutely, yeah, which is what someone said in chat. We need to educate our sons as well. But it does make me kind of sad that that's the state we're at with this, because sexual assault and the Me Too thing did for a large part bring up just how many women were being assaulted. And unfortunately, there was a lot of really, really weird backlash against the Me Too thing. And the main complaint that I saw about it was that the people saying Me Too were forcing people who didn't want to talk about it to talk about it. Like they were forcing women to join in, even if they weren't ready to come out and say that they had been assaulted. And I was looking at this argument like, how does a hashtag force somebody into a situation where they feel they must say something? Like, what is that even as an argument? Like, that we're saying people should be allowed to live in fear and be silent about it, that we shouldn't like reach out to fellow sisters or queens or however you want to say it, and you want to be like, it's okay that if you want to say it, you can, but you're not forced to say it, but at least know that everybody else is going through it, so know that you aren't alone. And to me, that was the point of the Me Too thing. And there was all this, oh, you're capitalizing on it, and I was like, this is some weird ass shit in response to this that I've seen in a while. Yeah.
You rip the lid off the shadow and it all comes out good, like Uma Thurman, I will say, is modeling a very queenly attitude that kind of ties into what you were saying, and that she's like, I'm going to take my time with this, and I will speak out when I have clarity of thought and I can like properly convey what I want to say. And that was, I think, a couple weeks ago, maybe a week ago. And then finally on Thanksgiving, she still hadn't spoken out, but she used the Me Too hashtag, implying that. And but that's just one way to do it. There are people that jumped right on top of it because they were waiting, like they were dying for the opportunity to finally like let that pressure off and just get it together. So it's just a shadow, I think, whatever that person was experiencing,
I find it interesting. I mean, like, I find it sad. I find it a lot of things. But something that tends to come up is it still is an us versus them conversation. For instance, you were like, yeah, let's teach the girls. Someone in the chat was like, yeah, let's also teach the boys. Yes. I mean, yeah, we hear boys more. But then also, like, Joey, you said something about it happens to girls. And then, you know, but boys also, it happens too. I'm not saying that you guys didn't say that, like, are against it, but things where we're so used to talking about it as if it's one side. And I think this is an issue that affects us all. Because it's not as simple as, no, this is affecting the girls. No, this is, you know, we're teaching our boys this or this. It's all of us. Yes, it's all of us. And hashtag me too. Yeah, I see a lot of girls, but I also saw some men come out about it too. And honestly, I was embracing that too. I liked the hashtag. I saw a lot of people being really upset because people had to go in detail or like being triggered, and I can totally understand that. But I also will say that no one would give details. I literally said hashtag me too and left it at that. I felt comfortable with, just as Joanna said about the Uma Thurman thing, you know, you go with where you're comfortable at. But it's a shadow, and it just keeps going because it's something that has been societal, and it's a very old one. And it has had layers and layers. Yeah.
I'm going to jump on something that was said in chat as you were talking, which was we need to teach boys not to rape and assault anyone. Yes, but women do also rape. And obviously they don't have a penis, but women rape with objects or whatever. And I won't go too far into that because, you know, heebie-jeebies, but it's not just men who are capable.
But, and that's not to say like this all lives matter thing we're glossing over, because stuff is heard. Yeah, women have not been heard. They do get dejected, and there is a mass issue with it.
Yeah.
But like, we're all connected and running into each other as much as, even if, let's say, you know, a male rapes a female, all of us.
Yes.
Like, it hurts her horribly how she goes on in our society. And all of the other people that they interact with, and then where that goes. It's all of us.
Can I say something? Also, can you hear me? Am I like choppy and cut out? Okay.
No, we can hear you fine.
First of all, I highly recommend people check out Lewis Howes, Howes, who is a very prominent man in the personal development kind of spiritual realm, who was raped as a young boy and talked about that before the Me Too hashtag came out. And I think he's just, a beautiful, powerful man. And I really was so touched when he came out with that. But I do think, well, I know statistically men assault more than women do. And often when women are assaulting, they're doing it in conjunction with a man. They're doing it with a man often, not always, certainly not always. But I think it's a patriarchal issue, because patriarchy is a hierarchy, which really damages men, and we never talk about it. But it's a hierarchy in which there's only like the tippy top of the pyramid of men have power, and then all of them like have different degrees of it, and the least powerful among them are the boys. And so that's why I said it's so complicated, because it's societal and systemic. It goes back hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, and it's like you don't just undo that like with a snap of the fingers, you know. That's why I think focusing, we have to educate ourselves, we have to empower ourselves, but like really, really focusing on the kids right now, I think, is our fastest opportunity to make a big cultural shift. And looking at our media, which again, millennials, I think your generation is doing just something really out there. Like, you seem so Uranian to me, like making a lot of changes. And I see that being driven through social media, but then impacting like the mainstream media at the same time. So it's happening, but small.
Yeah. that's actually something I talk on that you touched right there about, you know, the men also being hurt by this, and about like the archetype of the man and what they should be. And we mentioned king earlier and being of their own right. Being of their own right, again, doesn't mean doing what someone else does. It means being able to feel as you feel loudly and be okay with that and still be strong. Because strong, what is strong, you know? That's something to explore for each person. And so I think, like, even with that queen archetype, how you were saying the king thing, journey of the martyr thing, and that, you know, they're trained to be martyrs in their own way as well.
Yes.
Aren't allowed to express, and that it comes out in other ways, and it absolutely.
Don't cry, be strong. Hello, that's like a huge setup for being a martyr. Yes,
absolutely. Sharing that, Joanna. I know you were nervous.
Well, I gave a small piece of what I was thinking about it, but I have a lot of thoughts that involve men as well. Kind of the same thing that we were talking about with the beauty is like, if, you know, if the pendulum swings too far, you end up isolating all of these other people. And I think a lot of men, some of the backlash, the men that are part of the backlash feel threatened because they're like, I've never sexually assaulted anybody. And all of a sudden I feel like I'm being accused of something. Things like that, you know. We need to start working toward the solution soon, I think, while the conversation is still fresh.
Yeah. Well, and as you said, this generation, or what the millennials are bringing a lot of the conversations up. And honestly, as much as people are like, oh yeah, things go away on Facebook and then we're done, like, I actually think that it kind of starts this energetic wave that happens, and then it carries out because it's on people's mind. Actions outside of Facebook talking about it, and it goes even further. I think the power of social media, the millennials know, and that's part of how a lot of this is changing. Just as much as like there are obviously downsides to everything, there are definite upsides with this. For me, when I saw that, I was like, you know, yeah, we absolutely have to be mindful in these different topics, and we have to really have an honest conversation about it. But I'm also kind of excited happening, because the wave of this has that is really exciting to me.
We can't go back now either. It's been opened. The door's been opened.
Well, try as they might. People in power are trying to go backwards.
I'm gonna get to B's question right now, if that's okay, because I think that this is kind of a good spot to work that in.
I wrote an answer.
Joanna, I'm gonna direct this to you as well, since you have this journey and everything going on and stuff, and then we'll kind of go around. But I'm gonna go with you first. Do you queens, us, have any advice for accepting your power after years of abuse?
I do, but my first thought is it's a process. And I think the journey of the queen is a journey. You know, it's like one step at a time, one step at a time, one step at a time. And that's actually what makes the journey enjoyable and sustainable. You know, if you look at the whole scope of it, you're like, wow, the queen is something way over there that I don't relate to. It's like, well, what can I do to take one step closer to that? You know, and you just start, it's just little pieces. And if you have a lot of trauma in your past, I don't think you necessarily have to dive into the trauma of it. I think it could be as simple as looking at, like, what do I deny myself? Maybe as a product of the trauma, but what pleasure or what boundary or what do I deny myself? And then learn to give yourself permission for whatever that thing is. Start figuring out how you can start incorporating that into your life. And sometimes it's just a very simple pleasure. It can surprise you how simple it is, but you can like build momentum, like one little brick at a time. and you don't have to overwhelm yourself at all.
That reminds me of the part in Women Who Run with the Wolves.
Mm-hmm.
Where she's like, you know, you have to like imagine like a smorgasbord. Pick what you want. What do you want? It has everything there. What do you want? With kind of that. I love that idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think sometimes in the spiritual community, it's very tempting to be like, ooh, shadow work, or let's dive right into it. Mm-hmm. But if you've had a lot of trauma, sometimes it's just better, easier to just start small and start looking for little ways to get your power back. Maybe you don't even have the experience of getting your power back. Maybe you feel like you never had it. And sort of getting into the joy of that, like the excitement of like, oh my God, I'm taking my power back. How am I going to do today? I'm going to eat cereal for dinner. You know, like, I know that sounds so flippant and weird, right? But if you're a person that's very like regimented with your food, and maybe you have a history of eating disorders, but you've always wanted a bowl of cereal for dinner, sometimes something so simple can really unlock something deep inside.
Yeah, I sometimes find it really interesting that we as a spiritual community also can like almost trivialize something like that. All people should be seeing the depth there.
Yeah.
If everything is energy,
do
you realize what you're doing? It's not in that sense. That has a lot of power to just break the mold, as hashtag break the mold Joey over here knows.
Mm-hmm. I made many notes.
I saw that over there.
So firstly, I would suggest redefining your powerlessness. Change the internal dialogue. This is what I say to people who've been through abuse, and this is something that I know firsthand because I did it and I've been through it. So the first thing is, you survived. You fucking survived. It might have killed other people, and it has killed other people. You survived. That doesn't make you powerless. Rethink how you're talking to yourself. Now, I'm not going to tell you this is going to be an easy process, and it is a process. It's not easy, but I think it helps to come to the point where we are not defining ourselves as powerless in any situation. I think it's better, in my interpretation of things that I've been through, to feel like I went through something horrendous. I went through something vile, and it took something from me. But that's not the entirety of the story. It's not who I am, and it's not who I am now. So if you can find moments of pride, which a lot of people say is a bad thing, but I don't think so at all. I think if you can find moments of pride in that, like, I survived, I got through it. Something that I used to tell myself was that I had protected my sisters, which is what I had been putting up with the abuse for, because I didn't want them to suffer the way I did. And it's a child mentality, because I was a child, and we have to realize that's another thing. Were you a child at any given point? You survived something as a child that a lot of adults couldn't cope with. You're in a trusting place. You're where we naturally depend on adults for reason and rhyme. Take the blame out of how you talk to yourself. That process can lead you to beginning to forgive yourself. Because a lot of people who have been through abuse blame themselves. I should have done this better. It was what I was wearing. It was what I said. If I was a stronger person, no. Forgive yourself for having been through it. Know that you are not alone, that there are many, many people who have been through this, unfortunately, and that predators, abusers, they pick people, they condition people, they use certain methods of control on purpose that they know will eat into the psychologies of certain people. So they will put the fear of, I will tell your parents, I will shame you. And that's their language. So you have to learn to realize that that's not your language. That's not the inner heart speak. That's not you doing that. And when you can learn to differentiate between the abuse talk and you can learn to forgive yourself, is when you start to take back a little bit more power. You weren't powerless. You went through a horrible situation. You had elements that, you know, conditioned you or it kept you in a fear state, and you can reject them and you can learn to hear them for what they are. That again is a process. None of these things happen overnight. There is no quick fix. I kind of wish there was. But having been through and keeping going through the process, because I have nightmares to this day, and I have to deal with the kind of the panic aftermath of myself. So it's okay that it's a process as well. No, do not listen to anybody who tells you you should be fine now. I don't care if it's been 1 year. I don't care if it's been 10 years. I don't care if it's been 20 years. Nobody gets to tell you how you heal and that you should be fine, whatever fine means. And from that, healing begins. So there you go.
I love reframing it as I am a survivor, like making a clear statement, like what an affirmation that is. And then you start to get thinking about what is a survivor, you know? So maybe a step for you might be the survivor before you get to the queen. And then from survivor, it might be the thriver. Like, what's the difference between surviving and thriving? I would say at some point you want to move on from the survivor to really live. I'm into this idea of creating the kick-ass life of your dreams, like reaching your potential, living your best life.
Guys.
Yes, but you know, like surviving is different than thriving. I think the queen is when you're ready to start really thriving in your life, but the survivor is an important step along the way. And I think what Joey just said is so profound.
Yeah.
And what Joey's doing is helping other survivors. And that's an important part to being a survivor yourself, is you are the keeper of that experience and that truth. And there's so much power in what you can do to help heal all this crap that we've been talking about, that society's going through. Even if it's just you're a good listener. That's it. That's enough.
I would say my answer to this is to take small jumps. Small ones. It doesn't have to be huge, but small ones, because the more you do it, the more that you see that you will survive. And power.
Yeah.
Also,
so
can I just say on a side note to that, don't beat yourself up if all you did today was get out of bed.
Yes.
Sometimes sometimes we need those days where we just feel it. That's not a failure. It's part of the healing process.
A phrase that helped me a lot is I'm still here. So even if you're having a day where you don't get out of bed, you're still here.
Yeah.
They didn't kill you. You're still here. And I know it sounds so like, but something about that phrase was very helpful for me.
No, I had a similar one. Yeah, I had a similar one, which is I am here now. Because the worry and the anxiety separated between past and future, but not actually being. Yeah. For me. And so that, you know, the I am here, I'm still here, I am here now is like, yeah, this may hurt, but I'm here now.
I love the now. The now part of that, Cris, is so awesome too, because something I talk a lot about with queen energy is your point of power is in the present moment. And when you're truly in the present moment, there is no past and there is no future, which is a trick. I mean, that's like super zen, right? It's an ideal. It's nobody lives in the now 100% of the time, maybe a brand new little baby, but that's your point of power. And I feel like even just saying it, like Cris just said, it calls that in. Like the word now just brings you into the moment in such a powerful way, and you're free in the moment, if only in your own mind.
Well, and it's a way, I mean, when I was going through depression and everything, it was a way for me to pull myself out of the funk, the fog for a second. I remember I would do it before I had to go into my part-time job that I had, and driving in, I would sit there, I'd get there like 5 minutes early. I would sit there and I would say it to myself, and suddenly the clouds would be brighter. Colors around me were vivid. I could smell things that were there that I hadn't even noticed because I was too busy being in my head or the past. And it was being alive. It was living. Just to say I am here now.
Oh, I want to touch on one last point, if it's all right with you guys, with regards to this particular part, is something that I struggled with, and I kind of, to this day, have a little bit of a moment with it, because this comes up in spiritual circles all the time, which is that you must forgive the person who abused you for your own well-being. And this is something that gets said in spiritual communities an awful lot. And I had actually said at one point that no, I don't forgive them, and I don't know if I ever will. And you know, and people had come to me and they were concerned that I was poisoning my inner self and things, until somebody else, actually there were 2 articles that were shared a few days later, which is the universe being like, no, here you go.
That's how it works.
I know. And there's a actual dialogue within that, that particularly survivors of sexual abuse, the actual power for them is not in the forgiving, because everything has been like set up around them to make them forgive the abuser, particularly when it's sexual. And there's so much apologetic behavior regards to sexuality anyway, that actually the power comes from not forgiving the individual, and they can get on with their lives perfectly well. They can find a place of equilibrium where they're not focusing on the abuse all the time, they're not pent up, they're not angry. It's just that that is a moment of power, and that is a choice. And we've been talking about how we tailor fit queen energy to ourselves anyway, and I think in terms of abuse and surviving abuse, we tailor fit what gives us back our power as we go forward. So I'm just gonna pop that in.
It can evolve over time too. That can be a stage in your process that might not be true for you when you're 60 years old. Because I think of the Anne Lamott, I think, who says resentment or refusing to forgive is like drinking rat poison and expecting the other person to die, to drop dead. And that's something I teach, but some things are true for me and not true for you. So that can be true for you, and you can move on and say, I don't forgive you. And that is your power. And that gives you a sense of control over the situation. And it gives you a sense of fuck offness that allows you to move on in your life. And that could be true until the day you die. For someone else, that could just be a step on the journey. And then they realize, I'm still holding on to this. I'm still trying to punish this person in my mind, or I'm still letting flashbacks bother me, and they might have to release it at some point on a different level, and that could be decades later. Or, I mean, I just think it's so different for everyone, and I think it's powerful that someone wrote that article, because I think that isn't put up. That's not what I was taught, and that's not what I teach, but I totally see the value in that.
Yeah. So guys, we have about 11 minutes left, and I would like to open it up to questions, if that's all right.
Yeah.
So,
I want to make sure that was okay with Joe. Like, are we cool on that?
Oh,
like,
yeah.
You're wrong. I was just saying that's
no.
That's valid. Like, that's a valid point. That isn't said enough.
Yeah, I think this is what I'm trying to say more than anything, is that I think as spiritual practitioners, often we get told what the way to heal is. And I think it's more about shifting it to what actually best serves us internally, and being okay with the things that best serve us internally. And if that is that process of forgiveness for someone else, that's what works for them, and that's perfectly cool. I'm cool with the thing. But for me, that was bothering me for a long time, that everyone was like, you must do this. And I'm not good with anyone telling me I must do anything anyway, because, you know, queen.
Hashtag Taurian moon.
Hashtag Taurian moon. I don't know what you mean. With a little bit of Virgo. but when it works for you, it works for you, and that's the part that matters to me. It's like if you can feel that you've gone through that process of forgiveness and that has worked for you and that's healed you. But on the other hand, if that doesn't work for you and that actually disempowers you further, then different strokes.
I think what you said about a sexual abuse survivor already being in that position, like you're just doubling down on that in a way, like telling them they have to forgive, they have to acquiesce, they have to be pleasing in that way. That's really powerful.
Yeah, well, and I think maybe the reason some of that happens is because it's again trying to have that person confirm their own power happens too, as opposed to, like, for instance, right now, you know, Joanna goes one way and you go the other, Joey, and you guys are able to have a conversation and not feel attacked by anyone and be completely queens in your own right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, it takes
whereas
power too is I do not forgive you until I choose to forgive you, and that might be never. That might be never. I decide, and that's very queenly. Do you know what I mean? Like, I will choose if you are forgiven. And I will say this, when I choose you're forgiven, it doesn't mean you get a free pass on what you did. It doesn't mean you get to be a part of my life. It doesn't mean that I don't condemn what you do. It just means I am setting myself free from all attachments to you. That's all it means. It's just I'm letting you go from my mind completely. And that's a process too, like that. You don't just say it once and it's done. It's just the beginning of a process. So I'm so glad you brought that up, because that really, I'll think about that after this for sure.
I would also like to share this mantra really quick before we get to the questions that Michael shared earlier when we were talking about, like, bringing our power back to us, bringing us to, like, I am here now and that kind of thing. And it says the mantra for that is, I call all that was taken away, lost.
You were super laggy then.
Let's see. Let's try it again. Am I better now?
At the minute.
Back to me all of my power. Away. All that I've lost. I just thought that was a really good mantra that it should be seen on here for people looking later. Questions, guys? Joey, do you want to ask the first one?
What, the role model one?
I didn't even see that one.
Amaryllis asked earlier about who would be your queenly role model.
Yes, yes, do that one. Yes.
Be historical, goddess, or fictional?
Yes.
Pass it to Joanna. Do you have...
I have too many. I'll just talk for hours and hours. I have a million. I have Athena, Queen of Swords, first and foremost, a mythological goddess that I work with. But I have so many. J.K. Rowling, I think, is a queen. I think that she's just not afraid to make commentary on society and politically, which could actually damage her career, but she's only stronger for it. And very outspoken, very powerful woman. Really owns her creativity, has a strong sense of self, and that self is what allowed her to be a mom on welfare and, like, invest fully in her dream, which is something that many of us are afraid to do. So she's a big one for me. Oprah Winfrey, I mentioned, probably everybody's queen. I don't know, but there's a lot in the political arena that came up. Largely just women that I see saying, no, you can't talk to me like that, or you're lying, or that's not true. It's just so exciting to see, you know. So I have, like, a long list of queens in my mind, but those are the first ones that immediately jump to mind.
I'm going to be a pain in the ass about this because I don't technically pick role models for a very specific reason. I think it's far better to focus on elements or the actions of certain individuals than it is as the person as a whole, because everybody has good days, bad days, times when they might, you know, fail. And I think if we're not careful and we're expecting someone to be a quote unquote role model all the time, we kind of dehumanize them a little bit. And I would much rather be like, this person did this fucking amazing thing, or said this amazing thing that really resonated with me, or they marched and protested and they did this amazing thing at any given point in time, than it is to say any particular one person. Now, I love historical figures. I love Elizabeth I, for example, but I also know, being a historian, about some of her less than savory moments. So that's the Virgo in me, which is like, I must know everything. I must know every side. I must know every angle. And so I get to the point where I much rather be like, the things that really resonate with me in terms of role models. I think the thing that really stuck with me is that somebody said, whenever there is trauma in the world, whenever there is disaster in the world, look for the helpers, because you will always find them.
Mr. Rogers said that.
There you go, Mr. Rogers said that. And that to me is what I do. So whenever there's like a disaster going on, and I always think that the people who are helping, those are role models, and those are people who, they care about other people as well. And I really feel that there's a strength in openly caring about other people in this day and age, because it's super easy to be just focused on the self in a world that kind of promotes it. So for me, anybody who like goes out of their way to share their experiences, and that can even be like here on YouTube with these two amazing ladies right here, and then there is, the lights all went dark in this. The lights all went darker. That's so weird.
It was me. I turned on the light here, and then it went down in Scotland.
Yeah. That was weird. There's like emphasis. And like these two amazing ladies here, and then there are other women who have, I mean, we've already talked about Kellyanne, and then like Molly Roberts, and these are women who have touched my life just through YouTube, but I consider them to be amazing women. So.
And not only those who are maybe have more subscribers, but even the ones that are just starting. I mean, when I see people come on and make their, I know how much courage that took. Okay, being queens in their own right in that moment too. I absolutely, you know, would extend that even to them. You conquered the fear.
Yeah.
Thank you for lending your voice.
I think for like, if you take a Joey perspective on this too, it's just to be like, that was a queen moment. That was a queen. That was a queen view. I like role models because I see them as a reflection of something I have inside. There's a certain amount of like spiritual maturity that allows you to say everyone has their shadow, which we're seeing in the Me Too hashtag. It's like these men that we love, they make this amazing, beautiful art. They made us laugh. They made us cry. They didn't never hurt me. Oh yeah, well there's this whole shadow that you didn't even know about. And so it's important to have a role model and say, I enjoy this person. I take inspiration from what they're doing in this area, but I accept there's a shadow that I probably don't see. But for me, the importance in a role model is if I see that in Oprah Winfrey, I know it's in me too. She's just mirroring a quality that I have. And for me, that's the power in having Oprah on my wall is like, I have an Oprah too. I have that. Like whatever it is I see in her that I admire, I know I have that too.
Yeah. Yeah. I think for me, if I'm gonna do the name, and I was someone who didn't really have like role models necessarily. I had like moments, but if I had to name people, I would totally name people, and one of them would be Roseanne Connor from the show Roseanne. You don't necessarily think queen, but man, she ran in that house.
You may have frozen up. Oh.
I got Roseanne. I think she froze, but I totally got the Roseanne thing. I think Roseanne is a woman that came into her queen archetype late in life. And that Roseanne Connor, the character she played, was maybe a catalyst for that. But yes, we've lost Cris.
Cris has frozen.
Wait, Cris, you're coming in and out.
Am I back?
No, we can hear you.
We have over-queened Google.
I know. We
There you go.
over-cleaned Google, damn it.
You might be, there you go.
So, see if maybe that'll help a little bit. Am I back now?
You seem to be.
Was I wrong about what I said
good.
about
Let me get this in quick. Yeah. So Roseanne Conner, she runs that house. She doesn't take any.
Oh, it's not gonna let you.
Damn it! Boldly her.
YouTube is like, we hate Roseanne.
Oh dear.
I'm sorry, Cris.
Oh,
Can you hear me clear?
you're still kind of breaking up a bit.
Damn it. YouTube, stand for this.
Hashtag save Roseanne.
Yeah. Hashtag save Roseanne. Well, anyway.
Go for it, Cris. We can hear you, but we can't see you.
Okay, so I was going to say Roseanne Conner. I was going to say Estes, who wrote Women Who Run with the Wolves, because I love all of her work. She takes something and goes so far into depth and adds so much meaning, and she has such a presence in her words and to me. I would also say my mother, and even more than that, I would say my own grandmother and the archetype of the grandmother of all grandmothers. Because to me, they are crones that they're like passive and stay somewhere like a freaking doll put away now. First of all, is really insulting. But second of all, I think that there is something in the matriarch aspect of them who has led and talked to and multiple generations of men and women, and has created in this world in that way, established her space of power through that.
I think a queen.
Grandmothers.
You were getting bits and pieces, but I heard you say matriarch, and I know this is in defense of the crone as well, because I know you, Cris, and I know that's what you're talking about. But when I think of a matriarch too, I think of a woman who owns her own wisdom, and for me, a queen is like getting in touch with that and really becoming that in your own life. And then a matriarch is really, she starts like, it's like queen for everyone, it starts. And we don't have matriarchs anymore. We don't honor. That's changing too. Thank the Lord. Like that's changing, but slowly. Yeah. And you're kind of a born crone, I think, as well.
I'll take that.
A born crone. She came out of the world like out of the womb, going like, "Let me tell you something, kids."
Yeah, I feel that feel. I think
the voice.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's why I was so excited to talk to you two about the queen, because I have my take on it, but you two, oh my Lord, every time I listen to you, I'm like, I never really thought about that. Or, oh, that's a new way to think about things. And, Cris is like kind of this born crone queen. And then Jo is like the dark goddess queen. And I know it interchanges and you both have a little bit of that, but that's a very different energy, I think, than I carry. So it's really cool to get the different takes on a queen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I love it. And
oh, you're in.
I'm the only one that doesn't hear Cris.
No, she's like echoing now. Cris, do you want me to wrap it up? Because we're over time anyway and we can't hear you, darling.
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Do that.
Okay. So huge thank you to Miss Joanna Devoe for joining Cris and I today. Even though Cris is in like dolphin mode right now, that's all I can hear is like, bravo, bravo. That's all I can hear from Chris's side of things. So do you want to tell everyone where they can find you, Joanna, and what you've got going on right now?
Yeah, I think the link that Cris shared or you shared somewhere will lead people. There's a free Queen video series for those of you who want to start the Queen journey for free, like without making any kind of investment. I also am doing Queen, a 5-week audio journey at the beginning of the year, January 1st. But if you're not ready to invest in all that, or you don't think you are, at least do the free 3 video series, because it will definitely get you started on thinking about the victim, the princess archetype, how to move on from there, and then just some beginning steps for like stepping into the queen, wearing your invisible crown and all of that. So I'm at www.joannadevoe.com, and that's the first blog post you'll get to has that as well. So if you're watching this, you can't find the link, that's where I am.
Cool. And yep, we've got all of that in chat. Good. Okay, Cris is in chat, so I can see
so much for this too. This was so enlightening. I'm going to be thinking about what you said, Joey, especially about the forgiveness thing. I think that's such an interesting, queenly thing to be like, I will decide when and if you are forgiven, and it might be never.
So we're going to be back. Hopefully everything should be fine tomorrow on Chris's channel again for another live chat, just me and Cris tomorrow. Have we got a subject yet, Cris, for tomorrow? I will wait for her response in live chat. I'm not sure if we'd picked one or if I need to ask her. So right now on my channel, somebody or YouTube bot decided that a 2-year-old video about a spell oil was offensive to them. So I can't currently live stream on my channel. And I'm fighting them tooth and nail, but it's been a week and a half now, and they keep going, oh, well, your channel's fine. Your channel's up. Oh, it's a technical error. And I'm like, it's not. I can't live stream because you did this thing. Can they still see me and Joanna in the live connection? Because you said live connection was lost. Are we still live? Can you guys still?
Interesting timing on that, wouldn't you say?
Yes, YouTube. Oh, I think people maybe can. Oh, okay. You can still see me and Joanna. Okay, fine. So we'll be on Chris's channel until I get that fixed, and I will fight tooth and nail to get that fixed because it's driving me crazy. Yeah, there's something weird with YouTube's new system. Some people are thinking that it may be an anti-pagan thing because there's, you know, the big channel with Styx who does all of the I've forgotten how he presents himself. He's got long hair and he's very kind of political in the stuff that he discusses. He had his entire channel taken down the exact same way that I did, and he talks about spirituality and politics and stuff. So it's all a bit at the minute, but we will be here tomorrow on Chris's channel, even if I can't get mine to work. So we will be back talking about, I'm not sure what yet. We'll figure something out. And if you guys didn't know, that Cris and I have started the What the Flux podcast, which the first episode of every month is free to the public, but you can come join up for a fee, which will be $30 a month now, I think, because we're past the first month mark. And in that you get, well, we decided you get 3 podcasts, including a journey, which Cris and I are very proud of each month, because we sit and we write them out and we add layers to it and add music to it, and it's basically a guided meditation and in a flux way of thinking, and they're all very, very different. And then the fourth week, we have a live chat and we have our own group, and you can come in and it's a safe space and we talk about things and go deeper into things and get that sense of community from the podcast. So that is what's going on with Cris and I right now. So I think, yeah, it said it was gone for a couple of hours, but I fixed it. It's happening to other YouTubers too. Yes, Sticks and Hex Hammer. He had the exact same thing. So that's it, I think. Are you good, Cris? Did you want me to mention anything else? Oh, it's $20 until the 30th of this month. And after that, the price will go up to $30 US. So if you want the $20 US a month price, grab it before it's gone, and you will be charged the $20 US for continuity. Is that it, Cris? Speak to me, Cris. Type to me.
I say her little face popping up right there.
Oh, this is a terrible way to end a book.
It was so nice hanging out with everybody, commenters alike.
Yeah. So thank you guys for joining us. Chat was off the hook today. There were lots of really interesting conversations. I definitely think this time is better.
I better bring that up before I lose it. I know I won't be able to read the comments after. You know what I mean? Like after the live event, the comments go away, and I want to see what everybody was talking about. So I'm gonna try to. This is on Cris Ashburn, right? Yeah. Nice. Thank you guys for joining us, and I can't wait to read everybody's comments. Yeah, I don't know if what will happen if just me and you leave this, because Cris isn't here right now. Be the queen of your own life, or the CEO, or the king. Yeah. Well, thank you guys. I guess I'm ending the podcast because Cris has descended back into the underworld. So thank you guys so much for joining us. Joanna and I will now exit out of this because we can't end the live. I'm hoping once we both exit it, it will just automatically end the live. Otherwise, I don't know what will happen. It will carry on with no one there. So I guess. Bye. Much love. Bye. Peace. Bye.
I don't know if I'm live. Dang. Ha ha! I'm on. If you haven't, I'm going to go now. See what the hell's going on with my computer.